got God in her, and she just deserves a chance at life, like every living thing.
19-month-old Lindsey Kарлin, her parents, Helene and Roger, and her sisters, Samantha and Molly.
All we want to see is just some improvement so she has a chance, a fighting chance. Becky says.
The stimulation is essential therapy. Lindsey has a rare genetic disorder called Canavan's disease. It's terminal, and without a pioneering operation here at Auckland Hospital and the glimmer of hope it offers, she has as little as 5 years left to live.
My daughter has a death sentence, and I want them to give her a shot at life.
It is agony shared. Mark and Eileen Mushin and 2-year-old Alyssa live just a few kilometres from the Karlins. Alyssa suffers the same destructive disease as Lindsey. Abnormal formation of her brain means she can't control her arm, leg and body movements. She can't sit up by herself, can't talk, can't do the normal things we expect of kids her age.
It's a big step. She's going to make history today.
And if it is history that these infant girls and these families are making, that's because they are the pioneers in what may be one of the greatest breakthroughs in modern medicine.
It is the world's first genetic intervention in the brain of any child, and I think that's a significant step.
Professor Matthew During, the man behind the medicine. His team here at the Yale Medical School have crammed up to 5 years' research into just 8 months.
So I think for us to actually have made that amount of progress and bring something to the clinic this quickly, I think when we say clinic, at least to the first stage of clinical testing, is a fairly dramatic time course.
Fairly dramatic?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard. There hasn't been a precedent for doing such I don't think, as rapidly.
Where's the music?
At home in America, it's that breakthrough that's kept the Kарлin family going.
Yeah, sort of, okay.
For them, Matthew During has given the miracle of hope when before there wasn't any. Helene and Roger Kарлin are both doctors. He's an MD. She's a child psychologist.
Samantha put the vegetables out.
The model American family, Molly and Samantha, are normal, smart kids. Then came little Lindsey.
I mean, we took everything for granted, and then you have a child like this, and your whole universe has changed, your whole perception of the world and what childhood is about, and you don't take anything for granted anymore. Nothing.
Look who's here.
Eileen and Mark Mushin have 2 other normal children as well. Mark runs a car transmission business. Eileen is a school teacher. The Mushins too welcome the medical advances that Alyssa's case offers. That's her gift to science. But their focus, their absolute investment of love is not in Alyssa, the case study, but in Alyssa, their daughter.
Try it again, Andrew.
It's the sort of breakthrough we've come to expect to happen somewhere else. Yet here are American families on their way to New Zealand to get treatment they can't get anywhere else. Treatment with repercussions for medical science worldwide.
I'm incredibly nervous, very excited. I can't wait. I want this to be over. I want it to be done right now. But it's really a miracle that we've reached this point.
How is it that a doctor from New Zealand is at the cutting edge of this pioneering research?
One of the advantages I think that I had being a New Zealander going to America is that most Americans have this enormous system where things are done in a very established way, where I think a lot of New Zealanders feel naively that they may be able to do anything, and they maybe push the limits a little bit more than some Americans might.
Auckland Airport last Monday, Matt During there to welcome a bewildered and bleary Mushin family.
I was guarding this the way the Secret Service would guard the president.
The handover of the precious genetic cargo. The Mushins have never been out of the States before, and now New Zealand?
When you become a parent, you always joke that you'll go to the ends of the earth for your children. Well, now I get the chance to actually prove that.
Well, welcome to New Zealand.
The Carlins arrived in desperation days earlier to coincide with a rehearing of the North Health Ethics Committee. It had recommended against the operation. Now it was reconsidering.
You're going to get people who are fully supportive, and there are other people who will question every component of this study, and I think we just need to be prepared for that.
It's a nail-biting finale to months of fighting bureaucratic red tape in the US. News comes over dinner. The Ethics Committee has had a change of heart.
We're like delirious. What can I say? We're delirious. I mean, people heard what we had to say, and they are giving my baby a chance.
A dream that came so close to being snatched away, it's almost too hard to believe. In their hotel room in Auckland, the Mushins are also emotionally exhausted, weary from the journey, the delays, and now this last leap of faith for Alyssa. Shaving the beard is for Mark another significant moment.
I told myself I wasn't going to shave till we made it past all the hurdles that we had to get through to get to New Zealand to get the procedure done. And now that we're here, the beard's coming off.
1794.
There is a further ritual awaiting these two American families, a very New Zealand blessing by a very special New Zealander.
In the name of God Most High.
Sir Paul Reeves, former bishop and Governor General.
Receive God's healing touch to make you whole in body, mind and spirit.
But intervention, divine or scientific, is coming dangerously late.
Both girls are showing signs of quite rapid progression now, which is very sad to see. Even since I've had interactions with them, they clearly have become less aware of the environment. They don't relate to stimuli as well. And I think they can be kept alive perhaps for another 5 years.
At the lab at Yale, During's team has produced a synthetic gene and an agent they believe will successfully deliver it to the affected cells. The idea is that healthy new genes are injected into the infant brains of Lindsey and Alyssa, into the ventricular cavity here, and that these new genes will take over from faulty genes and thus stall the advance of Canavans. How? Well, it's complicated, of course. The white matter of the girls' brains here is being corroded by an unprocessed natural acid. Now, Matt During and his team are hoping that their new gene will order the production of an enzyme that will neutralize that acid. Wednesday morning, the vials of genetic material painstakingly laboured on for so long leave for Auckland Hospital, travelling there in what for all the world looks like a chili bin. Inside, the long wait is over. Lindsey Kарлin is on her way to make history.
Anything that comes out of this will be good. Anything that we learn from this that can move us ahead. This is not the end, this is the beginning.
Lindsey is now in the hands of the neurosurgeon, Edward Mee. And if it has the look of just another day at the theatre, the significance of what soon will be performed here is not lost on him or anyone else. For little Lindsey Kарлin, the helpless tot at the centre of it all, there is no choice. There's no cure for her. Death is inevitable. But at least the gene therapy, the sole reason for her being here, offers the chance of slowing that process down.
Our aim is to pass the catheter from the frontal region down to the right anterior of the ventricle, and we should be able to locate that using standard anatomical landmarks.
Alyssa goes through the same process. A small burr hole drilled through the skull. The fine needle or catheter is being inserted through the superficial brain down into the ventricular cavity. Outside, Mark and Eileen Mushin, helplessly hoping it's all out of their hands now. So much has been invested in this moment, experiment and emotion, hope and hypothesis. The tension is palpable.
Just to feel we got to this point and we're here now is just amazing. And I almost never believed it would really happen, and now it has.
What we've been witnessing here is revolutionary, to say the least. If it's successful, and that's a long shot, but if it's successful, it will revolutionise not only the treatment of Canavan's disease, but Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, and other neurological disorders.
Yeah, it's a very important day for me. It's a historical event, you know, of significance, of major medical significance. Excellent, very good. Because I've been intimately involved with the families for this, it's a very emotionally charged event for me, and so you lose some of that scientific objectivity. It's been a really spiritual phenomenon for me as well, and I think that has been one of the reasons why it's been so fulfilling, and of course that's why my hope is there.
The recovery room, and Helene is reunited with Lindsey, the surgery over without a hitch. For the Carlins, for baby Lindsey, these are new beginnings. There may still be complications, more treatments may be needed, but new beginnings nevertheless, the beginning of hope.
Well, we just heard she was okay. It was a relief.
I mean, there's that ray of hope. There is that ray that this has got a rationale behind it. There is a justification for doing this because we're putting the healthy gene back in, but we may well be, and we may well be too late.
Mommy and Daddy are right here, honey.
Alyssa's operation is over too. No complications this time either.
Everything went fine. Okay? Went well. It was good. Really well. No problem.
Overwhelming gratitude from mother to scientist.
Gave her a chance.
It will be a month yet before biochemical tests show what effect the new genes are having.
You can beat this thing, baby. I'm gonna beat it.
And what now? Now these parents watch and they wait. Watch and wait over these two little girls. The two little girls with God inside them.
We might not be in time for Alyssa and Lindsey, but we're perfectly willing to accept whatever comes out of it, and that future children will be able to beat this disease.
Two extraordinary families this morning, each with a little girl who has inherited a fatal genetic disease. It is a story of tragedy and courage, hope and compassion. Here's Dr. Howard Torman.
You know, it's interesting. We talk an awful lot about what heart disease, cancer, HIV, but there are other diseases that you rarely hear about, so-called orphan diseases. These are illnesses that are relatively rare. They usually have no cure and for which there is usually no big research effort. Well, this is the story of one such disease called Canavan, of two little girls who have it, and of the extraordinary efforts their parents are making to try and save them.
At birth, she looked completely normal. Our pediatrician said, this is the healthiest baby I've delivered in a long time.
If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands, clap your hands.
If you're happy and you know it, and you really want to show it.
She is a pioneer, and she is a very special little girl for us.
If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands.
Meet Elisa Mushin, who just turned 2, and Lindsey Kарлin, 18 months old. Two little girls who were pioneers in genetic research and in a race against time, a race that may or may not save their lives.
The story begins at about 2 months of age when Helene, who was a child psychologist, noted that things just weren't right with the baby.
For us, probably right around the time she was about 3 or 4 months old when we started noticing things were wrong.
These two Connecticut families, living only 30 miles apart, didn't know each other, but they soon would find their lives linked through Canavan disease, a rare but fatal genetic disorder that some parents unknowingly pass on to their children.
It was horrible. 3-month-old baby in my arms who looks really pretty good, and somebody gives you this horrible diagnosis.
Not only is it a disease that so few kids have, but it's a disease in which
A, they don't get any better, B, they get worse, and C, they die before they turn 10.
Blindness, difficulty in swallowing, seizures are all common results of Canavan disease. A defective gene cuts the amount of an enzyme that's critical in the process of making myelin within the brain. Myelin is the insulation around the nerves. Without it, nerve impulses aren't properly transmitted, making it impossible to walk, to swallow, or even breathe.
So even though she has everything she needs to be a bright, terrific little kid, without that enzyme, she'll die.
That's it in a nutshell. She's missing one stupid enzyme.
You need a chemistry degree to prepare this meal. It has 3 different amino acids in it, vitamins, protein.
Life with a Canavan child is demanding.
We have to stimulate her mouth before she eats because she doesn't have enough sensation.
Her life is filled with one therapy or another, including physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy.
And all that still does little to stop the unrelenting progress of the disease.
Some doctors had even told some parents, your child is going to get worse. There's nothing we can do. Go home and wait for your child to die.
But Roger Carlin, who is a physician, decided that he couldn't just go home and wait.
He refused to hear no. No matter how many doors were slammed in his face, no matter how many people said cruel, heartless, hopeless things, he refused to hear that, and he pushed on.
One of the challenging aspects was getting researchers together who were in different fields. We had to get the person together who had cloned the gene, and then the person who would potentially deliver it by all the research in gene therapy.
That researcher turned out to be Dr. Matthew During, a neurosurgeon from New Zealand at work on gene therapy for Parkinson's disease at Yale. He immediately understood that time was of the essence.
Both girls are showing signs of quite rapid progression now, which is very sad to see. Even since I've had interactions with them, they clearly have become less aware of the environment.
It was shortly after Dr. During agreed to lead the Canavan research effort that the 2 families finally met.
We met the Carlins about a week after Alyssa was diagnosed. We went public. We went to some of the local newspapers. I sent a letter out to my temple, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, donations started coming in.
And they've raised over $150,000 this way, enough to cram the equivalent of 5 years of research into 1 year. Dr. During's team often worked far into the night, knowing that each month that went by lessened their chance of saving Alyssa and Lindsay.
And what we're looking for mostly is to extend her life because we love her dearly.
What's ahead? A long plane ride very soon? We don't know. Each day is a new day, and I'd be absolutely thrilled if they only get better.
And the families did take a long plane ride to New Zealand for the first ever attempt at gene replacement therapy for a brain disorder.
Coming up next, that's exactly what we're going to talk about, the effort to help these children and what the chances are for its success. We'll be right back. Thanks, Howard.
This portion of CBS This Morning is sponsored by Maxwell House. Always good to the last drop.
It's 20 minutes before the hour, and Dr. Howard Torman joins us once again with the story of 2 Connecticut families and their quest for a cure for their daughter's deadly disease. Howard?
Hi there. Yeah, this actually is Canavan disease we're talking about, and it really boils down to a single defective gene that prevents enough of a particular enzyme from being made. Now, that enzyme, in turn, regulates the amount of another chemical that's very important to maintaining insulation around the nerves within the brain. So the researchers figured, hey, why not try to fix things by injecting some man-made, properly functioning genes into the brain and see if they take root? It's a very big experiment any way you cut it, but it was really the only option open to the Mushin and Carlin families if they wanted to save their daughters.
The Mushin and Carlin families traveled to New Zealand, hoping to give their daughters a fighting chance against Canavan.
When you become a parent, you always joke that you'll go to the ends of the earth for your children. Well, now I get the chance to actually prove that. I was guarding this the way the Secret Service would guard the president.
And with them travels a precious cargo of genetically engineered genes that will be surgically injected into their daughters' brains.
Welcome to New Zealand.
Dr. Matthew During, the researcher at Yale who managed to squeeze the equivalent of 5 years of research into one, explains there's one more hurdle. The local hospital ethics committee has now recommended against the experimental procedure.
You're going to get people who are fully supportive, and there are other people who will question every component of this study, and I think we just need to be prepared for that.
After hours of nail biting, over dinner, the Carlins finally have cause to celebrate. The ethics committee has changed its mind.
We're like delirious. What can I say? We're delirious. I mean, people heard what we had to say, and they are giving my baby a chance.
And after a year of stress and anxiety, it's almost too hard to believe. The vials of genetic material, hand-carried from the other side of the world, finally arrive at the hospital. It's now time for the surgery, an experiment everyone hopes will work.
Anything that comes out of this will be good. Anything that we learn from this that could move us ahead.
The surgical procedure is really very simple. A small hole is made in the skull, exposing the brain. The replacement genes are then injected directly into a small cavity deep within the brain. It's hoped these new genes will then take over for the damaged ones, correcting the chemical imbalance that is the basis of Canavan and stall or slow the progress of the illness.
It is the world's first genetic intervention in the brain of any child, and I think that's a significant step.
It's a big step. She's going to make history today.
Next, it's Alyssa's turn. And while she receives her injection of new genes, Lindsay is brought out to recovery.
Well, we just heard she was okay. It was a relief.
The operation is over.
That's great.
We gave her a chance.
Both girls will run a fever for 2 days, but then both fully recover from the surgery.
Okay. And then the question is, will they recover from the disease? It's interesting, this particular genetic approach may also be useful or have some application in Parkinson's diseases and some other disorders within the brain. That remains to be seen. But for the moment, the Carlins and the Mushins are obviously concerned strictly with their own little kids.
These people are so by themselves. You talk about some of the other giant diseases that we talk about on a regular basis. They were by themselves. So little help in the medical community for something like this.
Yeah, there really was. And what I found very interesting was that Roger Carlin is a physician. He's an internist. And one of the things that I thought was intriguing was talking to him and saying, how did you mobilize? I wouldn't have a clue how to do it. And he talks about just being on the phone for hours and hours and hours and beating on doors and people closing doors on him and just being persistent and getting to where they are now.
We'll ask him more about that in a minute or two.
Wow.
Thanks, Howard. 16 minutes before the hour. Next, meet Lindsay and Alyssa and their parents when we come back.
And we are back at just about 13 minutes before the hour. We want to conclude our amazing medical story this morning about a disease called Canavan and two families trying to overcome it. Roger and Helene Carlin are now here with their daughter, Lindsay. Good morning. Thank you very much for being with us. I know you've had some preliminary tests done now that the surgery has been done. How's little Lindsay doing?
She's a different baby. She's much more alert. Somebody said to me she's less spacey. You know, before she would have alert periods, but you had to work very, very hard to get her to look at you, to get her to smile. Now she's smiling on her own, smiling at toys. It seems like little things, but for the degree of impairment she had, it's tremendous.
Do the tests also reflect anything happening chemically differently
Yes,
inside?
There have been MRI studies which study the substance that's elevated in their brain because it's not broken down by the enzyme that was shown. And normally it's quite elevated, and before surgery it was quite elevated. Now in two areas it's much lower, in fact normal.
We're looking at pictures of you taking her in for the MRI there.
Right.
That was brutal.
It's hard to imagine how you have maintained your tenacity throughout this. You're a doctor, you deal with these issues day in and day out on your job, and you had doors continually shut in your face.
Well, it was very difficult times, and I had to have incredible persistence in order to be able to get anything done. And when you had doors shut in your face, you had to look at the next door. Try to open that one.
When do you know? Might this be a blip on the survey screen that you went down, you went through all of this work to get this gene developed, go to New Zealand, have the operation? Might this just be an aberration for a month or two? I mean, when do you know, or will you ever really know?
I think within 3 to 6 months we'll know what kind of effect it's had. Certainly we see some mild improvements now, and they're terrific, and we're all grateful for it. We hope it continues. But these are uncharted waters. Nobody's ever done this before, and I knew that the moment I got into it.
Right, but the thing is, we'll be able to see through MRI whether she in fact develops myelin. Right now, she's showing clinical improvement, so we know something's happening, but we don't see myelin yet. If we see myelin on a scan, then we'll know it's worked.
The Mushins are here. We want to get them in. You guys okay?
They had a trouble with New York traffic this morning.
Actually, it was connected traffic.
Mark, Eileen, welcome.
See you too.
Yeah, made it all the way to New Zealand, got a gene and everything else, and got stuck in traffic this morning. This is the way life works sometimes. How has your daughter been since the operation?
She's doing well. We noticed some small cognitive improvements.
What have you noticed has changed?
She just has much more of awareness of her surroundings. She makes eye contact now. She'll look at you instead of looking through you or around you. And she seems a lot happier.
And for a disease like this and the condition that your children have been in, this is it miraculous?
Yes. It's miraculous in that it was just a few days, April 3rd, that she was diagnosed a year. And the fact that not only was she diagnosed but treated in some way within a year was just amazing, absolutely amazing.
You say it is a miracle.
It is a miracle. It's a miracle. I mean, they told us there was no hope, there was nothing. Everybody basically told us to go home and wait. It's a miracle.
We're going to keep track of your story, and we thank you all for sharing it with us this morning. Thank you so much.
Good luck.